Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Rocco Shields on the line, and she's founder and CEO over at Genius Produced. Rocco, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, Adam?
All right, so I'm doing great, and I'm excited to get into today's topic. So we will talk about the urgent need for virtual innovation in education, and what a timely and critical topic. But before we get into that, could you give us a little bit of an overview of your company, Genius Produced, please?
Sure. Genius Produced is a hybrid instructional design and content creation studio. We are based in Los Angeles, California, and we create exceptional online content for universities, companies, and whoever else needs to go online. A lot of our clients call it binge-worthy education.
I love that. I love that binge-worthy education. When we think about how education was typically delivered. So when I think about the typical textbook, the typical way of, memorization, I mean, there's a lot of different things that we maybe, depending on the audience listening, right, possibly grew up with. But that being said, what do you feel, I mean, you have a unique vantage point working in this space and working with universities and other organizations. What do you feel is currently missing in terms of online education?
Well, not so long ago, I was giving a talk, and I told the audience that one day online education would not be an option. It would become a necessity. And here we are, where online education is now a necessity. And you've seen a surge of corporations, companies, and universities, academic institutions running to actually adapt their curriculum to online. And so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to just try and take your lecture and put it on Zoom. And the feedback that you're hearing from students all over the country and the world is that just doesn't work. There's something lost in translation. So moreover, if you think about it, back when we were all in high school history class, we probably all had a teacher that would go on and on and on and on about facts. And it would be so hard for us to remember the facts. And so there really needs to be a shift right now to think about how do we engage a learner online, and how do we captivate them and help instate what we call state-dependent memory. So state-dependent memory is that phenomenon you feel when you hear a song or you see a visual image, and it takes you back in time, or it makes you remember something else, right? And that's a strategy we as learners have used in order to help us learn, ever since we were kids. Remember the 50 States song? Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh, yeah. So, adapting that to an older audience or to learners around the world, there are strategies that we could use, pulling from entertainment, in order to help and aid online education.
So I want to go further down that path. So I know Genius Produced works heavily in entertainment and online education. So how are you combining those two really to push online education to the next level?
So at Genius, we call it dynamic narrative pedagogy. Big words, right? But what it essentially is let me liken it to a football game. In a football game, you go into the locker room and you take a look at the plays. You could watch the recordings, you could play it back, you could circle the plays, you could see how you did things, reverse it and analyze it and work together as a team to look at what you're supposed to be learning and figure out how to do it better, or how to recall it. And so essentially what we do at Genius Produced is kind of the same thing. What we do is we look at what needs to be learned and we figure out a way to put that into what we call asynchronous content. There's two ways to learn online. One is synchronous, where you're in a live classroom with a teacher, and the other is asynchronous, which are activities that you do on your own, which is you could read, you could watch, you can listen. And so we develop unique asynchronous strategies for our clients in order to help the learning process. And going back to the football analogy, a lot of the videos we create, we will create what looks like a documentary or a film or a television show. We borrow from Hollywood to engage the online learner, and we disseminate interesting facts or even human stories with what they're supposed to be learning. So, for example, supply chain management. Okay, so how can supply chain management be the football analogy? Well, when we were putting a master's level supply chain degree together, we realized, these are some big topics. And the best way to figure out how to learn that is to adapt it to show a real business and how they function in supply chain. So we created a fictitious Amazon company. And the student, through their 3-year degree, watches the different characters in that company and how they work together and how they deploy different strategies and how the things they're learning actually work or don't work.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how come I didn't learn like this? Like, where were you at, like, when I was through school? This would have been an amazing college experience to go through with something like that over multiple years.
Yeah, and you see it in all disciplines, business, social work, psychology, and you name it. There will always be a story. So we believe in teaching by story. And we believe in teaching by looking at those stories, identifying and empathizing with the subjects that are being presented. And then, we see those subjects or those characters make mistakes. And we see them be able to learn as the student learns. And so by seeing that, again, going back to the football analogy, we can actually see the different plays, if you will, and actually we're able to analyze them with the student. And it creates not only something they could watch, but also something they could talk about. Key here is, we're not just showing a video. We are helping our clients and our partners develop assessment strategies and lesson plans around our videos so that they can really use them in order to teach. We don't want just a passive learning experience. We want an active one. And that is exactly what needs to be done with online education. We need to figure out how to make the student active.
So you mentioned supply chain management. Is the content, or should I say not the content, but are the subjects pretty agnostic? Like, this can work for any medium?
Yes, absolutely. I picked supply chain management because that's one of the more obscure ones, and I wanted to show that the content we create can be done for any discipline. A lot of our focus historically over the past 10 years has been psychology, social work. Over the summer, we were able to create a really, really amazing immersive course that went back actually to our work in 2012, where we created a virtual internship. So in 2012, much like now, there was so many people in online education, and there wasn't the ability to put them into internships. So especially with global events limiting graduate students from actually going in and practicing, we've created content that allows them to watch and actually practice what they're doing. So for social work, for example, we put together many therapy videos. We profile case studies, patients, and instead of being told what a patient should be presenting or how they're acting in a diagnosis, we actually give them a living, breathing patient, and they can analyze it and actually figure out what that patient is portraying and how to assess them. And in some of our work, we even have gone into, the synchronous classroom. So it doesn't end with just, us creating videos. We also deploy live actors into Zoom calls or into live classrooms, and students work with them as if they are working with a real life patient. Think of it as like a flight simulator for online education. where we're actually engaging students so they can work with a real patient before they have to go work with a real one.
Wow, Rocco, that sounds amazing. So, I mean, I'd be interested to hear your take on this because you again, work in the education side, you have the Hollywood side too. So how do you think, what do you think Hollywood's role can be in the future, just going forward for education? Because what you're doing, I think, is pretty groundbreaking.
Wow. So, ever since I was a little girl, I was obsessed with making movies. And there's something so fascinating about watching film or watching television. You feel like you are actually there with those people. You forget that time and space exists, and you are actually living life with them. And so when you think about appropriating that to online education, imagine a group of learners completely spellbound and raptured and actually learning. And so that is how Hollywood could help. We draw from Hollywood, meaning you can go shoot a video of a teacher's talking head, right? But essentially that's the same as a Zoom call. Also, they're just presenting. What we do is if we do film professors, we will add, what we call B-roll and graphics. And what we do is we engage the student's mind, and it will ultimately, borrowing from Hollywood, look like something you would see on the History Channel or on Netflix, where you're watching a polished documentary or an episode of Explained.
No, that's wonderful. So, Rocco, that being said, I want you to leave some information for the individuals or organizations that are listening to this on how they can connect with you and Genius Produced in your team. But I also want you to let us know what's typically a right fit to work with your team. I want to make sure the right people follow up with you.
Cool. Before we go into that, can I add something more to the Hollywood shaping?
Sure.
Is that possible? I think classically Hollywood has gotten a bad rap. I mean, you've seen it all over the news. And so when I started Genius Produced, I had this vision that I could create a collective group of artists within the industry that would not only come together to create groundbreaking content, but also love coming to work every day and believe that what they are producing can actually change the world. And we have seen it firsthand. Not only are we creating content for higher institutions and schools, but we've also created our own content that has caused almost a revolution of social awareness, where we bring tough topics to light by simply showing them in a different light that can actually engage anyone. And so it's really incredible the work we've done, and I feel grateful to wake up every day and to lead our team into this horizon and bigger horizons.
Wow, that's awesome. And so if somebody wants to connect and learn more about Genius Produced and they want to work with you and your team, I mean, what's typically a good fit to do that?
Well, anyone that needs to go online really needs to think critically about how they are taking the content and they are appropriating it for online consumption. And so I welcome anyone who needs to do that to drop us an email where we can be contacted at hello@geniusproduced.com. And we'd be happy to talk to you about some of the strategies you can deploy. But mostly we work with higher education. We work with top-tier companies, global brands, businesses. This doesn't end with just educational institutions. There are so many corporations globally that need to onboard their employees or train their employees and actually become integrated into a brand and a company. And so we also work with clients such as that to educate their corporate employees.
Fantastic. Well, Rocco, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about Genius Produced and all the great work you're doing, really taking us into the future of education. So great stuff there. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you're a first-time subscriber, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We like to have you be a return guest, have more great guests like Rocco coming on. And Rocco, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam.